Welcome back to History for Sleep. This channel is a quiet place to slow down, let the day fade, and explore humanity's past without rush or noise. Here, history unfolds gently. Questions are allowed to linger, and curiosity is never hurried. If you enjoy calm storytelling, deep mysteries, and long journeys through forgotten knowledge, you're in the right place. Tonight, we're decoding the world's most mysterious ancient languages. Languages that were once spoken, written, and understood by entire civilizations, and then lost. Scripts carved into stone that no one can read. Symbols repeated across continents without explanation. Messages left behind by people who vanished, leaving only silence and marks we still struggle to understand. Some of these languages remain undeciphered. Others are only partially understood. And a few challenge everything we think we know about human communication, intelligence, and history. Tonight we'll explore what we know, what we suspect, and what remains hidden, not to force answers, but to listen carefully to the echoes of forgotten voices. Language is one of humanity's greatest achievements. It allows us to share ideas, transmit knowledge, preserve memory across generations. And when a language is lost, something irreplaceable disappears with it. Not just words, but worldview. Because every language encodes how its speakers understood reality, time, nature, identity, the cosmos. When we decode an ancient language, we are not just translating symbols. We are reconstructing a way of thinking. And when we fail to decode one, we are left staring at a locked door in history. Let's begin with one of the most famous successes: Egyptian hieroglyphs. For centuries they were unreadable, regarded as symbolic art rather than language. Mystical, decorative, possibly magical. Greek and Roman scholars believed hieroglyphs conveyed hidden wisdom rather than phonetic meaning. This misunderstanding persisted for over 1,000 years. The breakthrough came with the Rosetta Stone, a single slab bearing the same text in 3 scripts: Greek, Demotic, hieroglyphic. Because Greek was known, scholars could compare patterns, names, repeated symbols. Jean-François Champollion realized hieroglyphs were not purely symbolic. They were phonetic, a complex system combining sounds, meanings, and concepts. With that realization, Egypt began to speak again. Temples told their stories. Tombs revealed beliefs about death. Administrative texts exposed daily life. But this success also highlighted something unsettling. Without that single stone, Egyptian history might still be silent. And for many other civilizations, no Rosetta Stone exists. Consider Linear A. This script was used on the island of Crete over 3,000 years ago. It appears on tablets, vessels, and seals. We can recognize repeated patterns. We know it represents language, but we do not know what language. Linear A predates Linear B, which was deciphered. But Linear B records early Greek. Linear A does not. Despite decades of study, Linear A remains unread. This suggests the language itself may be completely lost. With no descendants, no bilingual inscriptions, no surviving speakers. The symbols are clear. The meaning is gone. Then there is the Indus Valley script, found on seals, pottery, and tablets across ancient cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. The civilization that created it was vast, urban, well-planned, highly organized, yet its writing remains undeciphered. The inscriptions are short, often just a few symbols, too brief to identify grammar confidently. Some scholars believe it represents language. Others argue it may be symbolic or administrative. There is fierce debate. Was it early Dravidian? Proto-Indo-European? Something else entirely? No one knows. And because the Indus Valley civilization left no clear monuments proclaiming its beliefs or rulers, its voice remains faint. One of the most enigmatic scripts of all is the Rongo-Rongo of Easter Island, carved into wooden tablets, written in reverse alternating lines. Unlike any other writing system on Earth, The island's population collapsed after European contact. Knowledge holders died. Missionaries burned tablets. Only a handful survived. Today no one can read Rongorongo. Some believe it records genealogies. Others think it contains astronomical knowledge. Others suggest ritual chants. There are even theories that it encodes information in rhythm rather than words. But without living tradition, certainty is impossible. Across the ancient world, we find symbols carved into stone that defy classification. The Phaistos disc, covered in stamped symbols arranged in a spiral. Unique. Never repeated elsewhere. The Voynich manuscript, filled with unknown script, strange plants and diagrams. Carbon dated to the early 1400s. Written in a language no one recognizes. Some believe it is a cipher. Others a constructed language. Others a hoax so sophisticated it has fooled experts for centuries. Statistical analysis suggests structure. Patterns repeat. Rules appear to exist. But meaning remains elusive. This raises a difficult question. How many ancient languages have we already lost, without even realizing they existed? Writing requires preservation. Stone, clay, metal. Languages written on bark, wood, or skin vanish easily. And spoken languages vanish even faster. Every time a culture collapses without record, a worldview disappears. Now consider this. Some undeciphered scripts appear sophisticated, ordered, intentional, which suggests high literacy within their societies. Yet they left no translated counterparts, no bilingual texts, no obvious descendants. This implies abrupt loss, catastrophe, assimilation, suppression. History does not always erase gently. Some alternative theories suggest something more controversial, that certain ancient languages were intentionally hidden, encoded, or restricted. Knowledge reserved for elites, priests, initiates. If language itself was a gatekeeper, then full fluency would not be widespread. This could explain why some scripts are rare, short, or ritualized. They were never meant to be read by everyone. Others suggest ancient languages encoded information differently. Not linear sentences, but symbolic systems tied to sound, rhythm, or geometry, meaning not in words alone, but in pattern. This idea appears in traditions where chanting, repetition, and vibration were central. Language as experience, not instruction. If so, modern linguistic methods may be inadequate. We are trying to read music as text, or architecture as speech. As we continue, we'll explore these ideas further. We'll look at how linguists attempt to decode the undecipherable, what patterns suggest intelligence versus randomness, why some scripts resist translation, and whether certain ancient languages were designed to outlast speech itself. For now, let the mind slow. These are not puzzles to rush. They are echoes. And echoes reveal themselves only when the world becomes quiet. When linguists and archaeologists encounter an unknown script, they begin with patterns. How often symbols repeat? Which signs appear at the beginning or end? Which combinations never occur? Language, even when unfamiliar, obeys rules. No human language is truly random. There are rhythms, structures, constraints. By mapping these patterns, researchers can often tell whether a script represents speech, numbers, ritual symbols, or something else entirely. This is how scholars determine that the Indus Valley symbols likely represent language, even though we cannot yet read it. The repetition is too structured, too deliberate, too constrained to be decorative alone. But structure is not meaning. Meaning requires context. And context is what most undeciphered languages lack. When Champollion cracked hieroglyphs, he had names of kings, known historical events, a bilingual inscription. Without these anchors, translation becomes speculation. This is why undeciphered languages often remain so for centuries. Not because they are impossible, but because the final key is missing. Consider Etruscan. For a long time it was thought undecipherable. Today we can read it. We know its alphabet. We understand some words, but we still do not fully understand the language, because it is unrelated to most known language families. It sits alone. This is an important distinction. Deciphered does not mean understood. You can read words and still not grasp worldview. This applies even more strongly to scripts we cannot yet read at all. Now consider a more controversial idea: that some ancient scripts were intentionally designed to resist decoding, not through encryption as we think of it today, but through cultural isolation. If a language has no relatives, no trade partners, no bilingual speakers, it becomes opaque to outsiders. This is especially true if writing is rare, reserved for ritual, restricted to a few individuals. In such cases, when a culture collapses, the language dies completely. No handover, no translation, no memory. Some researchers argue that certain scripts, like Rongo or Linear A, may represent sacred knowledge, not administrative records, not storytelling, but cosmological information, calendars, astronomy, genealogy, myth encoded symbolically. So, decoding requires more than linguistics. It requires understanding belief systems. And belief systems are the hardest thing to reconstruct from ruins. Now let's consider symbols that appear globally: spirals, crosses, serpents, hands. These are not languages, but they appear alongside language. Some theorists suggest there was once a symbolic system shared across cultures. A proto-language of meaning, not spoken, but seen. A way to encode concepts universally. Life, death, cycles, movement, time. This idea is controversial, but not without merit. Humans across the world experience the same natural phenomena: sunrise, seasons, birth, decay. It is not surprising that similar symbols arise. But when symbols are paired with precise geometry and astronomical alignment, the coincidence becomes harder to dismiss. This leads to speculation about lost symbolic literacy, that ancient people could read the world itself as text, stars as sentences, landscapes as memory maps, monuments as chapters. If this sounds abstract, consider how modern people read graphs, maps, and diagrams without words. Meaning does not always require speech. Another enduring mystery is the Voynich manuscript. Despite modern computing power, artificial intelligence, and statistical analysis, it remains unread. Its text shows consistent structure. Its illustrations suggest knowledge of botany, astronomy, and medicine. But many plants are unrecognizable. Many diagrams are unlike anything known. Some believe it encodes lost medical knowledge. Others believe it is a cipher using a lost language. Others argue it is meaningless. Yet meaningful randomness is difficult to fake. The manuscript resists every known decoding method, and that resistance has only deepened the mystery. What is especially intriguing is that many undeciphered scripts emerge during periods of transition: cultural collapse, migration, climate change, conflict, moments when knowledge is fragile. This suggests that language loss is not gradual. It is sudden. One generation speaks, the next does not. And once a language dies, reviving it becomes almost impossible. This is happening today. Hundreds of languages are disappearing, not because they are inferior, but because they are unsupported. The ancient world faced the same problem, but without recording devices, without archives, without backups. What survives is what was carved into stone or clay. Everything else vanishes. Now consider a final controversial idea: that some ancient languages were not meant to be read by future generations. They were meant for the present moment, for ritual performance, for sound, for experience, chanting, rhythm, resonance. If language was embodied rather than textual, then writing may be incomplete. Symbols as cues, not content. This could explain why some scripts seem too short, too repetitive, too abstract. They were reminders, not records. Modern humans expect language to preserve information. Ancient humans may have expected it to activate memory. So, the true language lived in people, not in symbols. And once the people were gone, the language died completely. As the night continues, let these possibilities remain open. There is no single answer, no final decoding, only layers of understanding. Each script, each symbol, each mark, a voice reaching forward through time. Some clear, some distorted, some silent. And silence itself tells a story. Gently now, deeper into the quiet places of history. Among the most famous undeciphered scripts is Linear A, the writing of the Minoan civilization. It appears on clay tablets, ritual vessels, and stone seals across Crete, dating back more than 3,500 years. We can read the symbols aloud. We know how they sound, but we do not know what they mean. This is one of history's strangest frustrations. Linear B, a later script, was cracked and revealed an early form of Greek. Linear A, older and more refined, remains silent. This suggests something unsettling. The Minoans were not Greek. Their language did not survive. When Mycenaean Greeks conquered Crete, they adopted the writing system, but replaced the language entirely. The script lived. The voice died. Some tablets appear to be inventories. Others look ritualistic. Repeated symbols hint at offerings, possibly names of gods, possibly calendar cycles. But without knowing the language family, scholars are guessing in the dark. Now shift your attention eastward, to the Indus Valley civilization. Spanning modern-day Pakistan and northwest India, this civilization flourished over 4,000 years ago. Its cities were carefully planned. Its drainage systems advanced. Its trade networks vast. Yet its script, short inscriptions carved on seals, remains undeciphered. Most inscriptions are brief. 5 symbols. 7. Rarely more than 10. This is unusual. It suggests the script was not used for storytelling, not for law codes, not for history. Some scholars believe it was a logosyllabic script. Others argue it was not language at all, a symbolic system for identity, trade, plan, authority. But statistical analysis shows structure consistent with language. The signs repeat in meaningful patterns. And yet, there are no long texts, no bilingual inscriptions, no Rosetta Stone. The Indus script vanishes abruptly. The civilization declines. Cities empty. Trade ceases. And the script disappears entirely, as if it was never meant to last. Then there is Rongo Rongo, carved into wooden tablets on Easter Island. This script is unique. The glyphs depict humans, birds, plants, tools. They are carved in alternating directions, one line upside down, the next reversed. This is called reverse boustrophedon, an extremely rare writing style. By the time Europeans arrived, only a few islanders claimed to understand it. Within decades, that knowledge was gone. Disease, slavery, cultural collapse. Some believe Rongo Rongo recorded genealogies. Others say it encoded astronomical cycles. Others claim it was mnemonic, used to aid oral recitation. But one thing is certain. Whatever it was, it mattered enough to carve into sacred wood. And yet, it was fragile enough to vanish almost overnight. Now we enter more controversial territory. The idea of lost global scripts. Some researchers argue that ancient symbols across continents share deeper connections. Similar marks appear in Göbekli Tepe, ancient China, the Americas, and Africa. Not identical, but structurally similar. Simple geometric forms. Repetition. Alignment with celestial events. Could there have been an earlier symbolic tradition? One that predates known writing? Mainstream archaeology is cautious here. Similarity does not prove connection. But Göbekli Tepe complicates the story. It is over 11,000 years old, built before agriculture, before cities. And yet, Its carved symbols are deliberate, consistent, symbolic. This suggests symbolic communication existed long before writing as we define it. Perhaps writing did not emerge suddenly. Perhaps it evolved slowly, from marks to symbols to language. If so, some undeciphered scripts may be snapshots of that transition. Not fully linguistic, not purely symbolic, something in between. Now consider another mystery, Proto-Elamite. Used in ancient Iran over 5,000 years ago. Thousands of tablets exist. We know how the symbols were written. We know the system involves numbers. But the language remains unknown. Unlike cuneiform, which evolved and spread, Proto-Elamite vanished. What? Some believe it was too complex, too localized, too tightly bound to a specific administrative system. When that system collapsed, the script became useless. This reveals an uncomfortable truth. Writing survives not because it is meaningful, but because it is useful. Scripts tied to empire endure. Scripts tied to ritual often vanish. Which brings us to conspiracies. Some believe ancient languages were deliberately erased. Libraries burned. Priesthoods eliminated. Knowledge centralized. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria looms large in the imagination. While exaggerated in popular culture, there is no doubt that knowledge was lost. Texts copied onto perishable materials. Scrolls turned to ash. Languages erased with their speakers. Others take this further. They suggest that some knowledge was intentionally hidden, encoded, fragmented, disguised as myth. That ancient scripts contain scientific or cosmological knowledge too dangerous or destabilizing for later societies. There is little evidence for this, but the persistence of mystery fuels speculation, especially when modern technology fails. AI has been applied to undeciphered scripts, pattern recognition, probability modeling, neural networks, and still silence. This does not mean the scripts are meaningless. It means meaning is relational. Without cultural context, symbols are empty. Now let us slow down, because this is where the question truly lives. Why does this matter? Why does it haunt us? Because language is consciousness made visible. To lose a language is to lose a way of seeing the world. Undeciphered scripts are not puzzles. They are voices paused mid-sentence. Civilizations reaching out and never being heard. As you rest, imagine ancient hands carving symbols by firelight, not to confuse us, not to impress us, but to remember, to mark time, to speak to gods, to speak to each other. They never imagined us, yet here we are, listening. We continue. Let the pace slow even more now, because the final mysteries are the quietest ones. There is a theory rarely discussed outside academic circles, but deeply unsettling once you hear it. The idea that some ancient scripts were never meant to be read aloud. They were not phonetic, not spoken, not even fully linguistic. They were conceptual scripts, symbols designed to trigger understanding, not sound. In this view, writing did not begin as speech made visible. It began as thought made permanent. This theory is often applied to the earliest symbol systems. Marks that repeat without clear grammar. Signs that cluster around ritual spaces. Symbols aligned with solstices, stars, and cycles. In these cases, meaning may not translate into words at all. Trying to read them might be like trying to read a map as a sentence. You can sound it out, but you miss the point. This may explain why some scripts resist every attempt at translation. We are asking the wrong question. Now consider symbol density. Modern writing is dense with information. Ancient scripts are often sparse. This suggests that the reader already knew much of the meaning. The symbols were reminders, anchors, triggers, like a musician reading sheet music. The page does not contain the music. It releases it. When the culture disappears, the performance disappears with it. What remains is ink without sound, stone without breath. This perspective reshapes how we think about undeciphered scripts. They may not be locked. We may simply no longer be invited inside. Now let us step into deeper speculation. Some theorists propose that certain ancient scripts encoded astronomical knowledge so precise it borders on unbelievable. Star cycles, precession, eclipses, long count calendars spanning thousands of years. The Maya writing system, once undeciphered itself, proved this possibility real. What was once dismissed as mystical symbolism turned out to be advanced astronomy. This gives hope. If one ancient script could hide mathematics and myth, others might too. And yet, there is another possibility. One more uncomfortable. That some languages died before they were fully formed. That they represent failed experiments in writing. Paths not taken. We tend to imagine history as a straight line. Progressive. Inevitable. But evolution, biological or cultural, is messy. For every successful system, there are countless dead ends. Scripts that worked, but not well enough. Too complex. Too fragile. Too dependent on memory. These scripts vanished not because they were suppressed, but because they were replaced. And replacement can look like erasure. Now let us speak about sound itself. Some ancient cultures believed sound shaped reality. Words were not labels. They were forces. To write a word was to trap its power. In such cultures, writing was dangerous, restricted, sacred, controlled. This could explain why some scripts are so rare, why they appear only on ritual objects, only in temples, only in graves. Perhaps they were never meant for mass use. Perhaps they were meant to vanish. A whisper, not a record. Then there are the boldest conspiracies. The idea that ancient scripts encode non-human influence. That certain symbols appeared too early, too suddenly, too advanced. That writing did not evolve gradually, but arrived fully formed. This theory is popular in fringe circles. There is no credible evidence to support it, but its persistence reveals something important. We are deeply uncomfortable with silence. We want every mark to speak, every symbol to explain itself. But history does not owe us clarity. And now, the final truth, the most unsettling of all. Undeciphered scripts remind us that human knowledge is not cumulative. It is fragile. Civilizations forget, rediscover, forget again. The past is not behind us. It is beneath us, layered, compressed, broken. Every undeciphered script is proof that humanity has already lost brilliance once, and will lose it again. But there is comfort here too, because even unread, these symbols endure. They survived floods, fires, empires. They waited, and perhaps that is enough. Perhaps their purpose was not to be understood, but to remind us that we were never the beginning, and we will not be the end. As you drift toward rest, let these ancient voices fade gently into the dark, not as mysteries to be solved, but as companions. As our journey comes to a close, let the weight of history settle softly around you. The voices of the past do not need to shout to be heard. They linger quietly, in stone, in symbols, in the spaces between what we remember and what we have forgotten. Tonight, we've wandered through languages that once shaped entire worlds. Words spoken by fires long extinguished, meanings carried by hands that have returned to dust. Some of these languages were never meant to last. Others may still be waiting for the right moment, or the right mind, to awaken them again. And now you don't need to solve anything. You don't need to remember names, dates, or theories. Let the mysteries remain mysteries. Let the unanswered questions drift away like echoes in a long, empty hall. History does not demand your attention. It simply keeps watch while you rest. Thank you for spending this quiet time with History for Sleep. If these stories bring you comfort, curiosity, or calm, you're always welcome to return. Until next time, may your dreams be deep, your thoughts gentle, and your rest undisturbed. Good night.